The dublab Spring Membership Drive is happening now and throughout the month of May. If you enjoy the dublab archives, help us continue by donating today and become a member. For more details, visit dublab.com/membership.
Hello and welcome to In Conversation, a dublab podcast where each week we will bring you interviews from the dublab radio archives.
Back in February, electronic music legend Jean-Michel Jarre stopped by dublab's Analogue Players Club program. The 30-minute chat that ensued spans the rebellions of Jarre's early punk years, deep thoughts on Skrillex, notions of the future of the music industry, and his own sentimental view of Los Angeles. The interview, which features a gracious, cheerful, and vigorous Jarre, is a pleasure to listen to from end to end. Join Slayron and special guest interviewer Mitchell Brown as they take a revealing and enjoyable look inside the perspective of a real trailblazer. And one more thing while I have your attention. As you may know, all through this month, dublab is having our spring Proton Drive. 40% of dublab's funding comes directly from listeners, which means your help is absolutely essential in keeping us on the air. Please take a moment to go to dublab.com, give what you can, and make the kind of programming you are about to hear possible in the months and years to come.
Special guests in today, Jean-Michel Jarre. I hope I didn't just completely butcher it.
No, it's okay. It's more Jean-Michel Jarre, but Jarre is okay. You know, this is the kind of French name, maybe difficult to pronounce for you, but it's Jarre, Jean-Michel Jarre.
Yeah, Californians, we have the worst accents anyway.
Absolutely, but we can all improve, you know.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Yeah, good luck.
So let's start this off here with a little bit of I don't know in what era of bands this was for you, but this was the Dustbins, correct?
Yeah, that's right. We were talking with some collaborators I worked with recently on my electronica album, where I'm nominated Grammys and nominated for. Tomorrow, and we all discovered that we started with a punk band, and my first punk band was called the Dustbins. And I shouldn't say that, but it's true.
Well, you were also in a band called Mystery 4?
Yeah, that's right, exactly. Yeah. That was more a kind of prog rock. Already, quite with kind of sound design, and I was always been, even when I was in my young teenage, interested by processing the sound of my guitar or my organs and recording on tape recorders and playing the tape backwards or changing the speed. Far before even I've been involved in electronic music, really.
Yeah, that's kind of, I guess, the playing with the tapes kind of affects the sounds enough for you to be able to have the window into the electronic world, correct?
Yeah, I really started even before the synthesizers era. Actually, electronic music really being born, as you know, in continental Europe, with in Germany, in France, where actually we were actually more or less stealing, bank of oscillators from radio stations and to try to make some sounds and twiddling with strange filters and actually it all started like this. And also it was during the student revolution we were rebelling basically against everything, rebelling about the establishment of classical music, rebelling about the establishment of rock, because even the people from classical music or rock and roll, they were not considering people like us playing with oscillators and strange machines as musicians, and then I went into the Music Research Center in France, headed by one of the most important figure in electronic music in history of electronic music, called Pierre Schaeffer, and he's the one really who taught me and opened my mind on the idea that music is not only based on notes, based on solfeggio, but actually you can make music by taking a microphone, going outside, recording the sound of the wind, of the rain, of the street, and making music with noises. And actually today every DJ is doing the same thing, but at that time it was really something absolutely new.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely like the you working a lot with the musique concrète of the time, and like the repetition your mind will make something out of it. There's an interesting story about digital as it plays. It's just kind of these parallel lines, whereas analog is like going up and down over those parallel lines, going beyond the bottom and above the top. And it's like when you have a conversation, you can sit and you can focus and see what the person is saying, hear what they're saying, but there's all this external noise going on, and it makes you feel comfortable and at home. And musique concrète and some of those other elements have that. To me, at least, they have that. The ability to do that, to keep you at peace and grounded.
Absolutely. I don't know if analog is better than digital. I don't think it's the problem. It's actually there are different worlds, and the luxury today is actually being able to mix both worlds. I mean, the analog sound, as we know, I mean, not only vinyls, but the analog world. We are analog animals by the end of the day. I mean, we were made of flesh and blood, and our ears are not perfect, but we love our ears, and we at one moment in the development of industry, recording industry, we created something that was fitting our ears, not necessarily true, not necessarily true technically, but quite warm to our ears, and it took a long time to match this in the digital era. I think that probably from the past 5 or 6 years, now the digital means and digital instruments, plugins, softwares, are now starting to match the analog warmth. The same for movies. It took a long time and even some people like Quentin Tarantino or Christopher Nolan, they still filming with film and not digitally. It's the same thing. Images and visuals and sounds are following the same path in the sense of following the evolution of technology, but trying to also to match and to try to take the best of both worlds. Really, it's what I'm trying to do in my work these days.
When you're recording now, are you mixing both the analog and the digital realms, or do you find yourself going between, on the computer 1 minute and on an analog synth the next minute?
Yeah, I mean, it's all depending on what you want to achieve, which is great these days. Is actually you can decide when you have the privilege like me. I mean, having in my studio quite lots of analog equipment and digital equipment. It's like writing for an orchestra. I mean, sometimes you want to write for a string quartet or for a big orchestra and having winds and brass. And these days you can use a modular synthesizer. You can use a mini Moog. But also you can use Massive from Native Instruments and some plugins. And it all depends on what you want to achieve. And also technology is dictating styles. It's probably, because violin has been invented that Vivaldi existed. It's because the 78 as a record where you could only cut 3 minutes of music. Created a single. I mean, if Elvis was doing songs of 3 minutes, it was because you couldn't cut more on the 78 these days and those days. So and this is the same thing today. I mean, if you think about Massive as a plugin from Native Instruments, I mean, this just plugin created dubstep. I mean, without Massive, Skrillex wouldn't do the same music.
Yeah, absolutely.
And these days, which is great, is actually the fact of, I mean, we all love accidents and imperfections. You have imperfections in analog gear, but also in the digital. I mean, this kind of very harsh and harsh and rough sounds from the early digital. From digital sounds from the early Atari and Commodores and they're fantastic. I mean the sound is really fantastic. It's linked to a period, but actually sometimes I like to integrate this in modern recordings, in a modern project. I mean on my last electronica project, gathering lots of collaborators and lots of different artists around me. I mean I really experimented merging all these different type of electronic sounds.
When you were doing the project, were you working with people in your own studio, or people sending you files or sending you tapes, or was it all together that you would produce the song, or was it kind of?
I worked recently on two different projects. One is electronica, and the other one it was the end of the trilogy Oxygen. Trilogy, my first album, and I did a sequel of it that's going to be released at the moment, and this is a pure analog project with electronica, and this is the one of the reasons of my presence here in LA is because I'm nominated for the Grammys for electronic music for this electronica project. The idea was to gather around me people who have been and are a source of inspiration to me, linked to the electronic music scene from different generations. So you have people as different as Tangerine Dream or Pete Townsend or Moby, Massive Attack, and Gary Newman, the Pet Shop Boys, Boys Noise, Air, Gesa Feldstein, Julia Holter. I mean, lots of different, Hans Zimmer, John Carpenter. I mean, lots of different people who are, who are all part of the electronic music family, and this whole project, like you are doing, guys. I mean, it's actually we are showing that electronic music has a legacy, has a family, and has a future as well.
A big future, I would imagine. I mean, it only seems to have grown from when I think Mitchell and I both kind of got into it probably around the same time, which would have been 90s. We're much younger than you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Somehow it doesn't get old, though.
Yeah. I mean, there was a period, I think, that I definitely felt where the community wasn't, or just was like grasping for air, grasping for oxygen.
That's right, absolutely. But it's really interesting in your comment. It's because actually, I've always been convinced when I was young and a student that electronic music would become the major genre for the 21st century. I mean, at the beginning, electronic music has been linked with science fiction so much, and a kind of certain hope or fear towards the future, but definitely linked to the future. And I've always been convinced that electronic music would be one of the major genres, because it's not like rock and roll or punk or hip hop. It's not like a genre in itself. It's actually a different way of approaching music composition by, doing music. Your own sounds and creating your own sounds, and then you have so many genres within the umbrella of electronic music. Electronic music is much wider than EDM, and some people in this country, maybe are thinking that electronic music started with Avicii, but actually there is an old history of electronic music, as we know, from almost 1 century.
Yeah, here it seems like it's music doesn't really get big until it takes on the rock and roll kind of mentality,
which is also electronic music.
Yeah,
absolutely.
There's a lot of electricity on stage in a rock band.
Exactly.
And everybody's recording on Pro Tools or Ableton these days, so it inherently becomes...
Yes, it's very true. I mean, actually, all music in the 21st century is electronic.
Yeah, isn't an electric guitar just an electroacoustic instrument?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And even Lang Lang, as a classical pianist, he's doing electronic music because he's recording on Pro Tools, as you were saying, or Logic. And then at what moment you use a kind of electronic gear or electronic aspect. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
We can't avoid it.
mixing boards, all the chips in the mixing boards.
And you know, all these different elements, they are part of our music these days. I mean, you know, this desk I have in front of me in your studio, the Allen and Heath. Actually, I started with this brand. I mean, I did my first album with one of the first Allen and Heath console. I mean, they are instruments. They are music instruments. Why? Because their components, they have their own sound. You change the desk. You don't. Our voice will be different.
Yeah.
And you know, and you know, when people are saying yes, electronic music is cold and robotic and all that, I obviously I wouldn't agree at all with this. I mean, I consider really electronic music as cooking. It's like, you know, in front of you have some turntables. I mean, it's like an oven, you know, where you can cook beats and loops and textures and waveforms in the most sensual, organic way. It's actually, to tell you the truth, I think it's much more abstract to write music with a pen, pencil, and a piece of paper on the score, and then giving this piece of paper to somebody else who is going to play your music. This is very cerebral,
it's
very
like
abstract.
Like
I mean,
recipe,
with
like
electronic music, you are really, I mean, involving your hands, your body into the maelstrom of frequencies and sounds.
Yes.
Well, like with Oxygen, wasn't one of the things that you did with Oxygen is that you had to play it all live? It couldn't be sequenced? Was that, am I right to?
Yeah, it's true. It was before MIDI, and I mean, lots of sequences I did them by hand, and to synchronize myself. Oh. And actually, we are not that bad actually as being sync machines as human beings.
Overdub.
And yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I did that on the 8-track machines and just overdubbing myself.
You've got an analog sequencer right up here.
That's right. It's not so bad so far.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you approach new gear? Is it an influence you think, what could I do with this? Because a lot of times these instruments, I feel like they are their own ingredients, but what we do with them, it's still going to have a flavor of what they are. Like, say, you had a room full of 5 EMS synthes.
Yeah.
What you could do with them, you could do anything, but it's going to sound like an EMS synthe.
Yeah.
How did you approach Electronica 1 and 2? You had specific gear that inspired you to try this or that, or these people were inspiration more so?
Yeah, actually, this project is so special because involving lots of different collaborators. That was the idea behind it. As we know, that electronic musicians, we are like quite isolated in our studios. It's not like rock band or jazz band where you are making music with people when you are creating even the track. A piece of music. We are more like painters or writers in our ateliers. I mean, working with our machines or instruments and being quite isolated. And with this Electronica project, what I wanted to experiment is actually to try to share our DNAs and the creative process, not by sending files to people you will never meet or will even don't talk to. And but really creating this creative process in their environment or mine. So I traveled a lot, and with two dogmas, two principles behind the project. First of all, to work in the same room for the track, and also coming for the first time with a demo. So only a piece of music I wrote in function of the idea or the preconceived ideas I had regarding the artist I wanted to work with. I would give you 1 or 2 examples, but for instance, Pete Townsend, the leader of The Who, I mean, you could say, in electronica, what does it mean? And actually, this man, I mean, just introduced sequencers and as we know, synthesizers in rock with Who's Next and songs such as Baba O'Reilly.
Energy.
And exactly. And and you know, and then I went to his studio, and with 3 tracks I had in mind, and he immediately got the picture, and some other example is here in the city. I mean, with Moby, we shared lots of time in his studio, and why my first recollection of our collaboration is he actually just put a kind of very simple D minor on his keyboard, just 3 notes that a 5 years old child could do, and it was Moby instantly, and I've been really impressed through this kind of initiation journey for me. I mean, through lots of working with so many great artists. I mean, it's actually, you know, the instant recognizable sound they have is called style. I mean, our job is actually to make the air vibrating, right? It's very humble. It's very invisible because you don't. And the way you are making the air vibrating, you can create boredom. We can create the desire to move your body till the end of the night, or make people cry. And it's just by just moving the air slightly differently. And we all have a specific way of making the air vibrating, and this is called style, music style.
Yeah. I'm all down for the vibrating air.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the way you vibrate air.
Thank you.
Did you hear about that WuTang Clan record that they pressed a few years ago? That was just a single record.
Yes, I thought it was a tribute to what I've done 30 years ago. Yes.
I didn't know if it was or not, but I noticed there was a similarity in concept.
Yeah, I mean, I think my 4th album was called Music for Supermarkets, and actually I pressed it. Just 1 copy has been done, and obviously I've been. I mean, my record company didn't like this idea at all, and it was actually beginning of the CD era, and it was kind of protest act against the industry that saying, be careful, guys, because you are starting to kill the industry and to kill. Yeah, because first of all, you are going to kill starting to sell CDs like toothpaste in supermarkets. Were actually like the end of record shops, and as we know, record shops for a long time were the only link between consumer and a matter of music and the old catalog of music, because you could find a guy could become your friend and saying, listen to this, listen to that, it's great, I just received this, received that, and suddenly the music industry started to think differently, and the real music makers, music producers have been replaced by bankers. And that was quite premonitory, because I remember that I said, okay, that's going to be the end in a few years' time, and we saw that with the internet and everything. I mean, the music industry, died for a long time on its veins, and I'm not sure that today streaming is. Being welcomed by majors as a kind of grail for the 21st century is the answer. I'm not sure, for lots of reasons. I still think that there is a kind of, we have to create a new business model for the 21st century, because authors, creators, these days are at the nucleus of one of the biggest industry in the world, generating so much money, and the authors and creators have just the equivalent of a pizza without pepperoni by the end of the year.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not talking about people of our generations, right? But for future generations, in every family you have a young child,
dreaming,
becoming a filmmaker, a musician, a photographer, and he will probably will need to have a job on the side, and probably get rid of his dream, and this is something that that Music for Supermarket was quite premonitory, because it was the CD was for me a very dark product, because it has been introduced to the world as the grail for music, that take this and we will be able to listen to this music in 1 century because it's forever. We knew that after 4 or 5 years, I mean, the machines were different, and you could even play the first CDs on your machines. So it was the ultimate crookery when you can still listen to a vinyl cut pressed 50 years ago and it's still working. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I know your approach has always been pretty punk with music and like with how you're giving it to people. And it's interesting to hear you talk about your perspective on the music industry, because the music industry seems to always like hold back. Even the film industry is like, new type of way to put film out, and they'll introduce that. But the music industry has always been seems to be always so held back and like
conservative.
Very conservative.
It's really strange when you think that in the 50s, the 60s, I mean, the music, it was even not music industry, but the music world was really synonymous of underground, of cool, and suddenly they became so square.
Money. See the money, right?
Exactly, yeah. And it's really strange because they didn't get anything. Still now, I mean, it's. The music world could be much in a much better health. Yeah. If we were able, like the movie industry, as you said, to send a clear message to the outside world, which has not been the case so far.
Oxygen, you press that with a friend. Did you press it with a Friends label initially?
It's a funny story, because actually this album has been rejected by almost all majors by saying, what is this? I mean, there is no drummer, no singer, tracks are there is no singles, and tracks are 12 minutes, 15 minutes long, and on top of it is French. So no chance. And then a small independent label in France and in Netherlands took it, and it became a massive hit, we know. And it's strange, but I actually, now looking back, people could think it's like any success, it could be cool and easy, but it was not actually.
Yeah, millions, right? That album has sold millions.
Yeah, 18 millions, I think. Yes.
Yeah, that's quite a.
Yes,
that's a few million. Yeah, there was that.
Somebody behind us is miming a watch clock, and I don't know what it means exactly. But he's got a cool T-shirt anyway, huh?
Yeah, it's a great T-shirt, right?
Well, so in May, you're traveling the world in support of Electronica 1 and 2.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm looking forward for the US tour, because it's I did a few things in the States. I did even still the biggest concert in history still in the Guinness Book of Records in this country, in Houston. It was for the 25th anniversary of NASA, and it was 1.3 million people. But then, for different reasons, I never really toured. I did some concert, but really never get a North American tour. And I'm really looking forward for this one, because also the production is very special. I mean, I consider I've been also probably one of the first artists to involve so much visuals in my performances and my concerts. I always considered that electronic music needed, some kind of visual performance. It's so true to these days. But when I started, I've been probably the first one with Pink Floyd, doing it. And this one is really, I'm just saying this beyond the fact that obviously I would like maximum of people coming, but beyond this, I think you cannot judge on YouTube, because I devised something which is very close to a kind of 3D without glasses, where you have really a kind of perspective. And I've always been interested in music, in composing music by mixing, when I mix, also when I compose, to try to create this kind of architecture of sounds, soundscapes, creating perspectives, And I always saw that I would like to convey this visually. And at last, I think I've done it. I didn't know if it would work, but we were all blown away during the rehearsals with all these kind of low-res panels and different layers of LED panels. I mean, creating really kind of total immersion. So I'm really excited to share this new project with the North American audience.
That's excited to see it. Yeah. Absolutely.
So join us. I mean, I think in this town in LA, I'm doing the Microsoft Theater 27th of May. So obviously you're more than welcome.
Yeah, we'll see.
Thank you.
There.
Yeah. Are you? So you're here for the Grammys, and then anything else? Are you doing anything else fun? Going to the beach while you're here?
No, I mean I'm actually recording for different projects. Also, I've been recently also involved in kind of other kind of collaboration that I've been asked for, and with Damon Albarn for the next Gorillaz album, and also some other projects I have. So I'm going to share. I'm here for the Grammys, but also for some recording sessions.
Great.
You like burritos?
Yes, very much.
LA's got some good burritos.
Some good burritos. I prefer the tacos in LA personally. Yeah, I do.
Both.
Yeah, both. I mean, yeah. How about when you're in LA? What is something you would that you would say you have to go do this if you go visit LA?
You know, it's very strange. I mean, it's I mean, my father, he used to be a really great soundtrack composer. And Maurice Jarre, he did Dr. Zhivago and Lawrence of Arabia and all this. He got 3 Oscars.
Dreamscape.
Actually. Yeah. And actually, my parents split up when I was 5 years old, and unfortunately, I never had a real relationship with my father. And I always considered that the soundtracks world and Los Angeles, where he was living, was my father's territory. So it was a bit difficult for me to be here. But he passed away 6 years ago, and now I have this kind of very warm relationship somehow with him. And suddenly Los Angeles becomes for me something which is not linked with music, with movies, with palm trees, with Venice, with beaches, but something part of my my blood, in a sense. So I feel very close to this city. So it's the reason why I want to spend more time in the next few years here, around here.
Yeah, amazing.
To see more of you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Come in and do a DJ set. Play some synths. Come in and play live sometime.
Yeah, absolutely, with pleasure.
Yeah, we'd love to have you.
The carpet is rolled out.
Yeah.
Aaron and I collect a lot of library records. The Deserted Palace. That was a production music album, no?
Yeah, that's right. It was before before Oxygen. I've done some other albums, and one, this Deserted Palace, with a kind of production album for the Fox in America, for a kind of music library where lots of people doing electronic music that in that time where was a nice way to do some albums, and by doing some music that could be like synchro these days. I mean, these music were proposed to people to put them in their movies, in their TV series, ads or whatever, and it was quite nice because actually you were absolutely free to do whatever you were not commissioned. You were commissioned for an album, and you could do whatever you want.
Our pal David Hollander is writing a coffee table book on library records, and we talked about wondering if you had any albums under pseudonyms, any other library albums.
Yeah, I had some few obscure names. Yes, are still around, I think.
Do we get to be found? Do we get to find out who they were?
No, because otherwise it would kill the mystery, you know.
Take that, David Hollander. That's what you get for your coffee table book.
Oh man, there's this amazing. Have you seen that on Library Record? Note the Library Record, the coffee table book. That's just the covers, the Library Record covers book.
Yeah, sure.
Oh my God, it's amazing. Amazing.
That's cool. Very cool. I think they are more and more nervous on the other side of the aquarium, right?
Yeah. Well, we gotta drain the water here and let these fishes go home.
That's right. Exactly. So
Jean-Michel, it was a pleasure to have you in our Analogue Players Club.
It's a real pleasure, and I love this environment and all your philosophy, guys. It's
Thank you.
Good luck for the future. This is the future.
In Conversation was produced by Dublab, a nonprofit radio station broadcasting live from Los Angeles since 1999. Sound editing and theme song by Matea Baim. For more programming, visit dublab.com, and thank you for listening.